Hi everyone! Today I'm going to be making some Christmas ornaments. Can you believe it's that time already? It's crazy. And for the designs, I'm going to be using these tissue papers to make my ornaments festive. There's one sheet in particular that I'm really excited to use. I will be using RESINCRETE for these ornaments. I might also use resin, but I'll have to decide that later once they're made. So, if you're interested in seeing how these ornaments turn out, let's get started. I'm going to mix 150 grams of RESINCRETE powder with 45 grams of water, and that should be enough to fill these molds since they are pretty shallow. For those of you who've never worked with RESINCRETE before, the mixing ratio is 100 grams powder to 30 grams water, and it's a powder that when you mix it with water, it turns solid. It's being sold as a resin alternative, but in my opinion, I feel that it's more of an alternative to Jesmonite since from what I know, they're both pretty similar and both are mineral based. But I've never worked with Jesmonite, so don't fully quote me on that. I am using the 30-minute full cure mixture, so I have to work a bit fast. I think work time for this one is about 5 to 8 minutes, but since I'm not planning to add any pigments, this one works perfectly. Now I'm going to fill these up, run a micro brush along the edges just to make sure I don't get any air bubbles trapped, and then I'll do a top up to the molds. Before I forget, I do want to say that this video is inspired by Tam's Creative Corner. I recently came across one of her videos where she made a plate out of RESINCRETE and attached a paper napkin to it, and I absolutely love the result. I will link the video down below, but the other day I was going through my Christmas stuff and I came across this tissue paper and I thought to myself, would I get similar results? So here we are. I just had to try this. Now I'm just going to let these solidify and I'll be back to demold them. It's been 30 minutes and these are solid now, so I'm just going to take them out of the molds. I do see one little mistake with this first one, and it's from when I topped up the mold with the RESINCRETE. I don't know if the camera is picking it up well, but it's a bit uneven and slightly raised. The RESINCRETE must have been solidifying as I was pouring in the top up, but it's okay. I'm still going to use this one. One thing I will do once these are demolded is I'm going to let them sit overnight to completely dry out before I put on any sealer. If any moisture is left inside of these, it can make the RESINCRETE more brittle if it falls on the floor. All right, it's the next morning and these feel completely dry now. They don't feel cold or damp anymore, so I can move on to the next steps for the tissue paper. And this is the tissue paper I said I was excited to use. I really love this design. The red truck with the tree and the truck bed is just so classic. I will be making these ornaments double-sided, so for the backs, I'm going to put this red snowflake design. Now to attach or adhere, I am gluing this tissue paper to my ornaments. I'm going to try using two different things. First, I'm going to try this gloss sealer that JDiction sent to me a long time ago. If I'm being honest, they did send it to me last year. Whoops! And I'll try this for two ornaments. As for the other two, I'm going to use Mod Podge. I think Mod Podge is easier to find. Probably it's cheaper, and I am assuming a lot of crafters already have a bottle of this in their stash of craft supplies. But before I get to the sealers, the first thing I do need to do is cut these tissue papers into the right size and shape for my ornaments. So I'm just going to place my tissue paper on my ornament, adjust what part of the design I want on the ornament, and then I'm going to take a pencil, trace it, and cut it out. I will only be doing one on camera for you to see since it is pretty straightforward. I am feeling a little disappointed that I can't keep the full Merry Christmas text on the tissue paper, but at least the full design of the truck and the tree are in. And that is what I want to be the focus. Let me know in the comments if you've ever crafted with tissue paper and what did you make? So now I'm going to start with this gloss sealer and I'm going to pour out a little and I'm going to use the sponges that came with it to put this sealer onto my ornaments. Again, I will be showing you how I do one ornament with the gloss sealer and one with the Mod Podge. I'm going to apply both in the same way on both sides, so for time's sake, I'm just going to do one for each sealer. Now I'm going to dip my little sponge into the gloss sealer and I'm going to start by putting some directly onto the ornament. This is going to help the RESINCRETE become a bit more durable, and I'm also hoping that putting some first directly on the ornament will mean that the tissue paper will adhere better. Now, when it comes to putting on the tissue paper, I do have to be a bit careful since it is fragile. We all know that paper can't get wet, so I'm going to work slowly even though I have sped this part up. I'm going to work from the middle out and gently pass the sponge over the paper. I'm also going to use my finger and gently push out any crinkles I see to get the tissue paper to be as smooth and straight as possible. And just for good measure, I'm going to put one more coat on top, and this first side is done. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the next ornament, but this time with the Mod Podge. One thing I noticed that I think is worth mentioning is that the Mod Podge is quite a bit thicker and stickier than the gloss sealer. The RESINCRETE isn't absorbing the Mod Podge like it did with the gloss sealer, and I am having to work a bit more to smooth out the crinkles. Once I put the Mod Podge on the tissue paper, I wasn't able to smooth it out with my finger because it was just too sticky. I probably should have dipped my finger in the Mod Podge first to see if that made it better, but nonetheless, I managed to make it work. Now I have to let these dry and I'll be back once both sides of my ornaments are done. Okay, so both sides of these ornaments are done, and what I want to do now is clean up these edges. I have a bit of tissue paper hanging off the sides, so I'm going to take a nail file and very gently file the edges and the paper will break off. I do have to be careful though not to file too much because I don't want to start sanding the RESINCRETE itself. And just a friendly reminder that when you're sanding RESINCRETE or resin, to wear at least a minimum of a dust mask. The excess tissue paper is filed off now, but there is one final cleanup that I want to do, and it's to hide all the pencil marks I've been left with. If I were to do this again, I have to remember to trace the tissue paper very lightly with the pencil since the paper is so thin and see-through, but I have here some chrome paint markers and I'm going to go along the outer edges with it, and I'm also going to paint in the tops. I'm going to do 2 in silver and 2 in gold, and I think not only is this going to hide the pencil marks, but it's also going to give these ornaments a beautiful extra detail. By the way, I am making sure that I'm using each color on one ornament sealed with the Mod Podge and one sealed with the gloss sealer so that they can fairly be compared later. So far, the two biggest differences I can see is the thickness of each product, Mod Podge being quite a bit thicker, and the shininess once it's dried. Again, I'm going to work on the rest of these off camera and I'll be back once they're dry. All right, so these ornaments are almost done. I have 2 more things I want to do to finish them, but I wanted to quickly show you a close-up of the difference between the gloss sealer and the Mod Podge. These first 2 are the gloss sealer and the other 2 are sealed with the Mod Podge. As you can see, the ones with the Mod Podge are a bit shinier, but I honestly don't know which I prefer. I am liking the subtle shine of the gloss sealer. Let me know in the comments which you prefer. Now, if you remember, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned I might use resin, and I have decided to go ahead and coat these gold ornaments with UV resin. I'm really curious to see how these will look like with resin too, but it does make me wonder, without resin, how long lasting will these ornaments be? I probably should coat the other 2 ornaments with a few more layers of the Mod Podge and gloss sealer. especially since I added the chrome marker paint afterwards. I know it can be scratched off on resin, so I probably should seal it too. But yeah, we'll just have to see. Worst case scenario, if I start noticing some wear and tear, I can just throw a layer of resin on top and it'll be like brand new. A nice thin layer of top coat is every resiner's best friend. The UV resin is fully cured now, and I went ahead and put a layer on the backs too. I also did add this festive ribbon to all four ornaments, and I honestly just love how these turned out. I think this idea is really cool, and the possibilities are pretty much endless with the amount of different tissue papers out there. I might have to make more things with this technique. Be sure to let me know what you think. As a little bonus, here's a picture of what these look like on my little Pusheen Christmas tree. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you've learned something. If you did, then please smash the like button and don't forget to show Tam's Creative Corner some love on her video too. Thanks so much for watching. Happy holidays!